It's not that kind of, there's no gotchas here. Sound guys, we good for sound? All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Calvert Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee, I'd like to welcome you to this Board of Education Candidate Forum. At this time, we ask that if you're able to please rise for the presentation of colors by the Northern High School's Navy National Defense Cadet Corps and remain standing for the national anthem sung by Cadet Chief Petty Officer Piper Biggs. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Again, thank you to Northern High School for the Navy National Defense Cadet Corps and their singer, Cadet Chief Petty Officer Piper Biggs, for opening up the evening tonight. My name is Joseph Cormier, and I'll be your host this evening. CCAC is a parent volunteer organization for parents, guardians, community members, educators, and support staff who are working every day to help students with special education needs achieve everything that they can. I want to say thank you to Calvert Library for allowing us to host tonight. I want to say thank you to the Calvert broadcast team for recording this evening and setting up our sound. I want to thank the CCAC members who helped to work to create this set of questions. And finally, I want to say thank you to the audience for joining us both here at the library and at home online. CCAC is a nonpartisan organization, and we do not endorse political parties, individual candidates, or ballot initiatives. The questions tonight were sourced from CCAC membership and have not provided to any of the candidates, political parties or campaigns beforehand. Speaking of which, all 6 candidates were invited to the event tonight, and all 6 accepted and RSVP'd. Last week, 3 of those candidates chose to no longer join us this evening. I encourage you to review their performances at the American Legion Forum and the League of Women Voters Forum and draw your own conclusions of why their point of views regarding the benefits of corporal punishment, non-inclusion or acceptance of those deemed different, and the responses on their records and history of actions in the community, and why they wouldn't be here tonight. But that's enough time spent on those who don't want to be part of our conversation and haven't been to a CCAC meeting outside of a candidate forum. So tonight we are pleased to welcome Dr. Mike Schisler from District 1, Mr. Antoine White from District 2, and Ms. Jeanette Flame from District 3. We're going to start with opening statements. We'll start over in District 1, and we're going to give them 3 minutes for their opening statements. So, Dr. Schisler, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's here tonight. I also want to thank the Northern High group that just performed for us. We appreciate that. The reason I'm running is because I think it's extremely important that we continue to have a quality school system for each and every one of the kids that attend our schools. We have seen lots of debates about taking away things that have been put in place in the last 10 to 15 years in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think it's important that we don't go backwards. That's a phrase you hear at many levels in this election, but we don't want to go backwards. And the 3 folks sitting in front of you, we're running as a group, we're running as a team. We consider ourselves to be commonsensical, but we also consider ourselves primarily to be for our kids and making sure that each and every one of our kids has a chance to succeed in life. My phrase that I like to use, and I hope people don't see it as trite, but I think if we can make sure that every kid is respected, loved, and protected, if we can hit the target on each of those 3 areas, then I think we're going to be able to take care of many of their needs. Why I'm running again is I've had a lot of experience in education, to say the least. I was right out of college. I went in the Peace Corps. I was a teacher for 2 years in Central Africa. Came back, taught in Baltimore City for 2 years. That's what I have left, right? Okay, a minute and a half, 90 seconds. And then eventually I came down to Calvert County. I started teaching at Appeal, the south end of the county. I was a Title I reading lab teacher, then became an AIA teacher. That was over the course of 10 years. Then I was able to get a position right down the road at Beach Elementary as the assistant principal. And that's where I had my biggest introduction and experience with working with special education as the assistant principal, because we were in charge of doing the IEP reviews and making sure that happened. And after 4 years in that position, Dr. Jean Carroll appointed me as principal there. I was principal for 29 years. I did not see at that time that I was going to stay for that length of time, because the traditional administrative philosophy is that administrators are changed every 3 to 5 years between buildings. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. When I had an offer to move somewhere else, I declined, and that was accepted when I declined. And I learned as years went by, this community has been changing drastically over the years. It was an exciting place to be. The people were great, so I did not want to leave. So that's why I stayed for 29 years. Thank you. My time's up.
Thank you, Dr. Schisler. Mr. White, as soon as we get our timer reset there.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Antoine White. I was born, raised, and educated in the 2nd District, the district in which I am now the president of at the Board of Education. I graduated from Calvert High School in 1988. Also graduated from the CTA program. Then from there, I went to the Air Force. Then I worked for 25 years with SMECO. Now I currently work at the U.S. Naval Academy. I've been a basketball official for 30 years. I'm also the president of the Community Mediation Center, in which I am also a restorative justice facilitator. I've coached basketball, football, lacrosse, soccer, been a youth pastor, you name it, I've pretty much done it. I'm also a very advocate supporter of people being good to one another. And I think me being on the Board of Education, sometimes it just takes being nice and actually understanding where people are coming from and making decisions out of empathy. So that's something that's very important to me. So a little bit about why I ran. I ran in 2020, not because I felt that the school system was horrible or needed to be fixed. I just felt that we had a great school system and I wanted to continue to serve. I wanted to continue to serve the students. I wanted to serve the staff, all the unions that we have, the CCAC, CEA, Meet and Confer, and just making sure that everyone has a voice. And I wanted to make sure that I made decisions for them. So I ran saying that I was going to show up everywhere. I've been to every school, made sure I made contact with the principals, let the principals know, please reach out to your staff, let them know that I'm coming, just so they can have a little bit of time to actually talk to me. So I've continued to do that. Anyone who invites me to a play, a game, whatever is out there, I want to make sure that I go because I feel that it's important as a Board of Education member to meet people where they are. Everyone won't come to a meeting or do emails and things like that. So I always make sure that I go where I can be seen and heard and make sure that people know that I'm working for them. So I will always continue to do that. I apologize for me being dressed down like this, but I have an 8th grader who plays volleyball and she had a game today and I try to keep that balance of the family. So that's something that's very important to me. So I apologize for not getting a little more dressed up. But I'm here, and once again, you guys are here, so it shows that you care about our community and the education system. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Flame, as soon as we get our timer reset there.
Hello. Hello. My name's Jeanette Flame. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for CCAC for putting this forum on. I've lived here in Calvert County for 35 years. My children attended Beach Elementary, where Dr. Schischler was the principal the whole time. It was an amazing experience. We really loved the teachers. It was a good balance of teachers to community. So why I'm running? I'm a hands-on person. I love to get involved in different things, and I love to serve the community. And that's why I'm here. For the last 29 years, I've been the AR and contracts manager for Free State Electrical. So being a contracts manager, you have to deal with a variety of people. You have to listen, you have to learn, you have to research, you have to go for a variety of sources. And that's what I'll bring to the Board of Education. I'll bring an unbiased look, and I will listen to everybody, and I'll try to come to a cooperative agreement, a collaboration with parents and teachers. I appreciate CASE and CEA for endorsing us, and I look forward to serving this community. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those opening statements. So in front of you are the questions that we sourced out. I found in other candidate forums a lot of time is spent restating the questions, so I wanted to be able to provide those to you in writing so you can read them as we go along, and I'll read them out loud for the crowd. For our first question, we're going to start down in District 1 for the first question. What personal or professional experiences make you feel that you're best suited to make changes in policies or procedures that are specific to special education programming? If you do not have personal or professional experiences related to special education, how do you plan to gain the knowledge in special education programs in order to make effective decisions in policies and procedures in this area?
Yeah, by providing these in writing to us, you're taking care of different modalities of information. I learned over the years that when I would interview folks, they were a lot less nervous and a lot more forthright if they had the questions in front of them. It shouldn't be a guessing game as to what you want to know about somebody. So my experience, as I mentioned a moment ago, was 4 years as the assistant principal at Beach, where special education was what I was responsible for. That's going back quite a few years now. And special education was complicated then, and it's complicated now. I've been talking recently to some folks who are in the special education world here in our county, and the fact is that there's a lot of challenges. The thing I keep coming back to, and I'm going to repeat this in many of my answers tonight, is that when we look at special education and we look at our schools, it keeps coming back to funding. What I learned by reading more lately is that when IDEA was passed, that's the Individual Disabilities Education Act, there was a version in 1975, and the most recent version people talk about is 2004. But when it started, like in many other things we've had over the years, the federal government promised to pay 40% of all special education needs across the country. They've never met that. In fact, the estimate now is that they might be at about 12 to 13%. So there's quite a gap between 12 and 13 versus 40. And I think that lack of funding has stayed with us, and in fact, in many cases, it's haunted us over the years. So I think we need to look as a board as to why that has happened, what we can do about changing it. And if you talk to special ed folks, and if you've, just curious, if in the audience, how many folks have had a child in the special ed process? Okay, quite a few of you. So you know about the meetings that you attend to have your child tested, screened, and then an IEP developed. Well, a lot of times when we have those meetings, we're not playing or having all the resources that we need. And I think that goes back to the general funding. And I'll talk more about the local funding in a moment. But I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll reset our timer. And Mr. White, you can pick up, same question.
Yes, for me, I've done the work for 4 years. When I was running for the board, I actually got involved with CCAC to learn the function of it and exactly how they serve the community. And I was able to see firsthand from Dr. Kendi Anderson and Joseph Cormier and the others exactly what that looks like. And also to hear from the parents, to hear the heartfelt stories of how when they have the awards at the end of the year, and I was actually on the panel to read the letters to hear how these educators affect parents and students and their whole families. So I think by being able to communicate and hear and listen to what's going on, that's going to help us to make the policies and continue to change policies as we see fit. Because like Dr. Schisler says, everything that we deal with constantly changes. So we have to change with it and make sure that we have people that are making decisions that are for the students and for the community. So there are so many resources out there, so we have to make sure that people know that this community is there, and they have book studies and they have different events monthly, so you can actually get on there and find out. And I attend those meetings because I want to hear. We get emails from you name it, and from that community if they want to know as far as with IEPs and things like that. Those are questions that I need to be informed of. And also with the blueprint for Maryland, Pillar 4, resources for the students that need it most. I like the fact that Maryland is putting that at the forefront and making sure that our special needs community receives everything that they need to be successful. So for me, I've already done the job. I know what the job entails. I know how to make policies and change policies when needed. And once again, instead of me having to make all the decisions, my ears aren't painted on. I talk to the professionals who are in that field and make my decisions accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. And while our timer's resetting, a shameless plug for Coffee with Kendi on Saturdays from 9 to 10 a.m. over Teams meetings. You can find the information on the Calvert County Public Schools website. Ms. Flame, go ahead, same question, personal and professional experiences.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I do not have personal or professional experience with this, but as I said, that 29 years of experience as a contract manager means that I'm really good at research. So I have attended the CCAC many of the CCAC monthly meetings. I've read the books, The Lost at School, and the other books that have been recommended to me. I've pulled up all these reports. I'm looking at all these things, sorry. So that's what I do. I research this, I go out and I talk to the community. I've been to the Board of Education meetings for the last 18 months. I will talk to everybody and anybody about your experience. I went to the CCAC Awards. That was really touching to see, because you think of special education and you just think of the classrooms, but when you see those CCAC Awards, that auditorium was jam-packed full of people. And you saw the SROs get awards, you saw the bus drivers get awards, the IAs, the paraprofessionals. It was so moving to see people who aren't normally recognized to get those awards. And I think they really appreciated that, because I feel like some people feel invisible to a system. And I really appreciate CCAC asking people to recognize the people who help their students. So that's what I'll do. I'll go out, I'll talk to everybody, and I will advocate for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flame. For the next question, we're going to start in District 2. So, Mr. White, inclusion is more than a buzzword for us. How do you envision utilizing your role as a BOE member to create a more inclusive and supportive environment across all of CCPS for students with disabilities, not just in academics, but also in athletics and the arts?
Thank you for that question. You're right, it is more than just a buzzword, and sometimes we have to create policies to make sure that each student gets what they need to be successful. And as far as creating an environment, we have policies already in place. The anti-racism policy is not just about race, it includes everyone, including the special needs community. And with academics, we have different programs and policies in place to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. But also I found out today that with our special inclusive Olympics, that's something that's year-round. I didn't know that you can have different sports year-round, not just when they actually have the actual competition in the summer. And also with the arts, when we do different programs, no matter if it's for students or it's for the special needs students, we have to make sure that each of them have the same abilities and have the same choices to participate in the same programs, whether it's different programs throughout the county. Is making sure that we have everything that they need so they can feel included also. They don't want a handout, they want a hand up. And I think that as a board member, that's something that we have to ensure. I think that takes communication with the parents, the staff, and everyone to make sure that we're on the same page, because when we have the students in school, we don't have them at home. So that's why it takes communication for everyone to find out what they need so we can make sure that they are successful when they leave. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. White. We'll keep going down the line to Ms. Flame. Same question, utilizing your role to increase inclusivity and supportive environments across CCPS.
Thank you for that question. I think this is a great question, and I think, like Dr. Schulzer has said in the past, people get, in their minds that the people around you, you just look like each other. And they don't even think that I have to reach out. I need to get more people. I need to get a variety of people in this group. Not I'm just satisfied with the people who come to me. I've got to reach out. So I think what's important is that we go out and we educate the teachers and the support staff about looking to different areas in the school, reaching out to them, saying, hey, we've got this club, I think you might be interested. I'm going to refer to Dr. Schischler again because he has a chess club. So, he reaches out. I think he had more boys than girls. So he reaches out and says, hey, everybody can do this. Let's all be inclusive here. So I think that's what we have to do. We have to, speak with our club members and our teachers and say, hey, have you thought about reaching out to this group? I think they will be a great partner and members in this group. So I think it's just talking and communicating. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that answer. And Dr. Schisler will, same question.
Thank you. It brings to mind several things. As Ms. Flame was just saying, when I see inclusion, I think of the term heterogeneous. And we've had a debate in education for a long time about heterogeneous classes versus homogeneous classes. A heterogeneous classes is when you have a mixture of kids, races, gender obviously, and abilities. And inclusion carries along that same idea. And as also Jeanette said, a child has to be able to see what they want to be. So over the years, I finally got the understanding that when it came to school clubs, activities like the morning announcements, whether it was the choir, the bands, that all kids needed to be able to be in those. And the kids that were younger needed to see that those doors were going to be open for them as they got older. So that was important in terms of inclusion. But inclusion is a great sounding word, but in education we have a track record of taking ideas and jumping on bandwagons and not really seeing what the domino effects are. And I'll touch into chess for a second. When you're looking at a chessboard, and what I try to get across to the kids, when you see a move, sometimes you need to stop and think of a better move. So you look at the whole situation. With inclusion, what I'm hearing is that it works well for some kids, it doesn't work so well for some other kids. And part of that goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's a question of having, we're going to talk about staffing soon, it's a question about having staffing, it's a question about having time and money to train teachers and assistants who are going to work with these kids. So that's key. It's getting to the point of admitting that maybe a regular classroom is not the best spot for this child because of his or her needs. I had a teacher share with me, and she reminded me of a comment I made to her a few years ago, is that I noticed a difference between a group of 3 special ed kids when they were with her versus when they were in the general classroom. In the general classroom, I never heard a word out of them. When they were with her, they were constantly talking and feeding off each other. So we have to look at the situation with each child. Is that what works? Is that what works best for part of the day? Or does that work best for all of the day? So it goes back to the IEP, an individualized education program. Now there was a time in this country, 16 seconds, is that we thought we were going to move in education to IEPs for everybody. That we were going to get to the point where we could have enough technology and support that we could develop an IEP for every student. But inclusion, I think we need to look at it and make sure we are doing what's best for each kid. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Schisler. All right, so that is question 2. So now we're going to go into question 3. We're going to start with Ms. Flame. Staffing shortages are happening nationwide. Burnout, large and overwhelming caseloads, and the need for increased wages are all talked about widely, and this is not only impacting our general educators, but special educators, instructional assistants, related service providers such as speech, occupational and physical therapists, and our social workers and psychologists. As a BOE member, what do you propose or suggest can be done in collaboration with HR or the Department of Special Ed to increase the recruitment and retention of the specialized staff so that all children can receive the free and appropriate public education that their IEP guarantees when implemented with fidelity?
Well, this is a great question, and I appreciate it.
Please solve the world's issues.
I will. This is a lot right here. So I think our major issue is funding. We need to have our system fully funded. Once we have our systems fully funded, then we can reach out. We had that problem with the budget where a lot of teachers thought they were going to lose their jobs, and they went to different counties. So we have to increase our budget. We have to reach out and talk to different educators and tell them that Calvert cares about you. Calvert is fully behind these schools, and we support you. We're not tearing you down. We are behind you. And I think if teachers and educators feel supported, that they will come to Calvert. Calvert is the 5th in the state of Maryland. We have a lot to offer, and we have a lot of great educators that can be mentors. And I think the blueprint for Maryland with that 60-40 planning, I think that will be a big help with this burnout. And also, I think if we have training, we pay for training and certifications over the summer. I think there's a lot we can do to make Calvert County attractive. But the whole community has to be behind this. We all have to be behind our educators. And we should be. We have a lot of awards. So let's get everybody in Calvert saying, yeah, Calvert schools are great. You come here, and we have a friendly community. So that's what I think about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go down to Dr. Schisler. Same question.
The question begins by saying that this is a problem nationwide, and it is. And it goes back to, in my opinion, the funding issue. I was talking recently to a teacher who shared about another teacher that I knew who resigned, a special ed teacher who resigned this year and went over to Charles County. She got her $10,000 pay increase. So it's complicated. It's not just money, it's also housing. What do we do in this county for young teachers when they come in and they're looking for a place to live? That's a big challenge, that's a big ask for them. So we gotta look at multiple levels of this, and that falls in the lap of HR because they've gotta help folks find places, or at least point them in the right direction for places to live. And with burnout and large and overwhelming caseloads, I think you've heard this before, is that we are asking schools and teachers especially to pick up more of the social needs of kids and to fill in the roles. Can be like parents, and can be the emotional support for kids. There's a great deal that we're asking for our teachers, and yet we're not paying them enough, and we're not training them enough. Jeanette mentioned the 60-40 with a blueprint. That's been an idea that's been around the world for 15 years. The Scandinavian countries started doing that back before Obama, all right? Talking about how we were going to get more time for teachers to plan. First off, train them better. Make sure that anybody who went into a classroom at least had the training of a master's degree. So Finland was well known for doing that. So it's a training issue, it's a funding issue, and it's a support issue. And we have to make sure that we have the supports in place, not just for the teaching staff, but also for the kids. We have to be able to have enough behavior specialists to help. It can't be one behavior specialist among maybe 3 schools, and then call them on their cell phone and ask them to hurry up and get over here. We've got to commit to doing the funding for our schools. I'll talk more about funding locally in a second, but I think, again, these are nationwide problems. We need to look at them locally. We need to see what can we do differently here, and that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Dr. Schisler. Mr. White, as soon as we get our timer reset there.
Yes, along the same lines as everyone else said, staffing does require funding. And also, in order to retain and invite other teachers and special education teachers, we have to make sure that we're taking care of the ones who are here. Because if the people who are here don't feel valued, respected, or compensated properly, they're not going to invite other people to come to work for our system. Currently, we are 4th in the state now. Yes, we're 4th in the state now. So people want to come here. The problem that we're running into is when educators are being attacked and they don't feel valued, it makes it really tough. I was at a conference last week and people kept talking about the top 5. So I'm 6'5", but I was about 6'9" because we're in that top 5. So that's great to hear. But the follow-up to that was, the only problem is people there must think that their comments stay in the county, because they don't. People want to come here, but they don't want to come here because of a lot of the attacks and the madness that takes place. against our school system when we're the fourth in the state. So it doesn't really make sense to me why that would continue to happen, but it is. But with so getting the specialists, we have some great specialists here. You know, we're not top heavy in central office. We need supervisors there to make sure that they have feelers out there in communication with the unions to make sure that we are getting those specialists that we need. And of course, we have to be in contact with HR to make sure that we are getting the best people. You know, we don't want to lose educators to go to other counties. So yes, if we get to the budget later, everyone may know the budget issues that we went through. If not, go to June 11th, the Board of Calvert County meeting. You can see what we went through with our budget. So it was a scary time. We did have people who were in limbo for a couple of months because we were going back and forth. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So that was a scary time for us. But by having people in HR and communicating to make sure that we are constantly looking for the best applicants, I think that we're going to be fine. And also making sure Dr. Anderson, I think she's only been here 2 years, and she's done a remarkable job. I mean, with all the opportunities given to people. So having communication with her and making sure that they're funded, I don't think that we've ever taken away or shortened the funding for our special education programs. And I think if I had, Joe would have let me know. So I think that we're doing good with that. We just need to retain. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Since we're only on 3 answers per question here, we do have some reserve questions. So we're going to go ahead to question 4, and we're going to start with Dr. Schisler. Dr. Schisler, the Calvert County government recently released an ADA assessment of all their buildings, recreation, and service sites, and a plan for Calvert County to bring them up to the 2010 standard for ADA over the next decade. What is your proactive plan to bring all of CCPS buildings, entrances, playgrounds, and fields into alignment with that 2010 ADA standards and ending the current practice of considering old construction being grandfathered in?
My first question would be, is there a later ADA standard than 2010?
2010 is the most current
The most
ADA
current one.
standard.
Okay, thank you. First, I would say that as a board member, I'm going to trust the staff of the district. Ms. Suchita Warner is the head of construction, and she has had the job for several years, and she was key in the design and building of Beach Elementary, Northern High School. So she knows what the requirements are, and she makes sure, I can speak for the new buildings, that we meet those ADA standards. Now, I'm not sure if we're falling short on any other buildings in the county, but I would trust her and her department, that they're going to make sure that we come up to speed on that. And again, if it's a question of not being up to speed, my question is are we not doing it because we don't have the funds currently to get them done? And then we have to address that issue again. But I would trust Ms. Warner, and I think we're in good hands with her and what she does in her department. Thanks.
Thank you for that answer. Mr. White, same question about ADA compliance in current construction and old buildings.
Well, I'm glad that we actually, that night voice is coming in, sorry. But I'm glad that we did, that they did decide to make sure that we are up to snuff with that. And I would have to agree with Dr. Schisler. Suchita Warner is pretty amazing. We have reports that she comes and she actually talks about down the road, years from now. But also we have community members. If there is a gym or playground or something that isn't accessible, they let us know and they put it in the plan to make sure that they are. Because once again, we have to ensure that each student has the same abilities to access playgrounds and everything else in our school. And I think that we do a really good job with it, but also making sure that we are communicating with the commissioners to let them know so there's no surprises down the road. If we know a project is going to be needed, to make sure that that is funded in the budget for the next year, so we don't run into any issues where we actually have the problem. But I do know that, and I see all the time the upgrades that we are constantly doing, and Ms. Warner stays on top of that. So I definitely see that that will continue. And my job is to, when she speaks, I listen, we vote, and I would have to say our board members that's one thing that we all come together on. We may not see eye to eye on some things, but when it comes to the safety and making sure that our students are able to access playgrounds and things like that, we come together on that. So, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And Ms. Flame?
Yes, thank you for this question. I am really curious to see this ADA assessment of the buildings and recreation and service sites. I assume you've seen that, so I'm curious as to how many buildings, entrances, and playgrounds they said do need to be brought up to speed. I agree, sitting in the Board of Education meetings, Ms. Warner answers those questions, the construction questions. She is very good at her job. And like Dr. Schisler said, it does depend a lot on funding, but I feel like they would definitely concentrate on the ones that need it the most. And I do not like I do like the idea of not having schools grandfathered in, because that's kind of a cop-out. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so we'll move on to question number 5, and we'll start with Mr. White in the middle. Mr. White, we spend a lot of time talking about valedictorians, state championships, and the amazing career opportunities through the Career and Technology Academy. What do you see as your role on the Board of Ed in preparing students with more complex needs for the post-secondary transition who might be on the alternative graduation track, or those who are on IEPs who will no longer have those supports post-high school?
Great question. You're right. I think that we have to make sure that we are boasting and building up and acknowledging all accomplishments for all of our students, whether it's career and technology or sports or what have you. And I definitely know that I stay up on that because I get emails and messages to make sure that I give them their shout outs during our meetings also. And also when I learned once I was on the board that, we're responsible for our students up through 21. So making sure that even with transportation, there was some kids who weren't being transferred or let off they couldn't go home because their parents weren't there. So it took about 13 years of these students not being able to have this transportation. But Karen Maxey, she actually is the woman. She runs the board. She's my go-to. So when she came to me about this issue, we asked why or why not. So we have to make sure that we are making sure that our students are receiving what they need, even post graduation, just to prepare them. Because when we're talking about career and college and career readiness, we have to make sure that we're doing that for all students, even if it's a different track or different path. So I think that making sure that that communication is taking place early and consistent, and that's the way that we'll make sure that we have them prepared when they graduate. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And Ms. Flame, we'll go to you for question 5 as well.
Thank you. I think this is a good question. I definitely think it needs a lot of thought, but I think since you have like dual enrollment with your colleges, you have your AP courses, you have your CTAs, I think we should have plans like that for our students for that post-secondary transition. Like Anton says, we are responsible through 21. At those CCAC awards, I saw a lot of students who had gone through a series of jobs with a variety of people, and I thought that was a really great way to introduce them to the community, especially like our CTA does that. It introduces them to careers. There's a career resource officer starting in middle school and high school. I think I hope they are also being included in this conversation. What do you envision your future? They have this setup where you pick pictures what matter most to you. And then the career resource person is like, okay, then you're a visual person, you're an artistic person. These are the things that you can do with your skills. And I think everybody should be involved with that. But I would definitely have to look more into that, and I appreciate that question.
Thank you, Ms. Flame. And Dr. Schisler, same question about post-secondary transition.
Thank you. Antoine, I'm going to ask again, was it June 11th? Was that the evening meeting? Yes. With the commissioners? Okay. If you had a chance to watch that June 11th meeting and there was a public comment section, I'm going to tie this into what was said that night and what's been bothering me since then. Matt Poteet, he's the director of technology for the system. He addressed the commissioners and he said, Calvert County is the 17th wealthiest county in the nation. I never heard that. It surprised me, to say the least. And so that goes back to my thoughts about the funding issues. We're 17th in the nation. I also found out by checking that there are 3,143 counties in the United States. So out of 3,143 counties, Calvert County is 17th in the nation in wealth. If you look at it at the state level, we are second in the state. Howard is first, Montgomery's third, I believe Anne Arundel is fourth. So if we're in those levels of wealth, why do we go through this drama every year for the budget? I can remember when I was back at Beach and attending the superintendent's presentation of the budget, and I noted year after year after year, it was the parents from CCAC who would get up and speak and ask for full funding of the budget, but ask for funding for their students. And I used to think, well, we've got a finite pot of money. There's so much that we have to cover, and how are we going to make these increases that these parents want and need? It goes back to the question of, are we covering, is everybody paying its fair share, their fair share? You can ask that at the national level, state level, but certainly here in Calvert County, in my opinion. So I think once we address the sense that education is an investment, not a cost, and education is an investment in all the kids, whether it gets special ed services or they're the valedictorians, all right, then we need to make the commitment that we're going to provide them with the resources and make sure that they find doors that will open for them when it comes to what they want to do in life. So it's, in my mind, it's a package deal that we have to address the funding issue, which will help us address the staffing issue, which will help us address the resource issue. And if we don't do that, then we're cutting short all of our kids, but especially the kids that need us most. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Schisler. Ms. Flame, we're going to come down to our sixth and final question this evening. The earliest interventions are often the most impactful. What do you envision for CCPS to continue to grow the infants and toddlers program, coordination with Hippie, Head Start, Judy Centers, and other community programming?
Thank you. This is a great question because, like Dr. Schisler said, we need to invest in our schools and our community. So there's a report about the Judy Hoyer Early Learning Centers that I've read into that a lot. They help you for prenatal through 5 years old. It's an incredible program. They help the parents. They help get them food. They make sure the whole family is cared for, and that's what is needed for actually all children. All children need to make sure all families are taken care of, that you have food, that you have your social emotional learning. And that's what I envision for CCPS. I envision more investment, more paraprofessionals, more counselors. The earlier we get to students and parents and they feel that support, the better our whole community is. We all need to come together. We all need to help each other. And that's what I envision for CCPS, that we help people and families from the beginning until whenever. Everybody needs some help, and let's help everybody. But CCPS, we got to do that from the get-go. So that's what I think CCPS should do. We need to invest, and we need to be behind everybody so everybody does their best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Schisler, we'll take the same question to you.
Thank you. Again, in my opinion, it goes back to valuing each and every kid. We've mentioned the blueprint up here. One of the pillars of the blueprint is to focus on early childhood and resources to families, resources to schools that work with our younger students. And I remember when the blueprint was being presented to the county commissioners, I got the sense from some of the questions and responses from some of the commissioners that they were concerned that that pre-K was not going to be universal. It was not going to cover every 3 and 4 year old in the state. The way it is right now, the blueprint, I believe, is going to cover families who meet certain thresholds above the poverty level. So in my sense then was we were getting pushback against the blueprint because we weren't providing something across the board. Well, sometimes it's not everybody who needs everything across the board. That's the question of equity. And with these programs, and I've been working with the Head Start, I've been on their advisory board for at least 2 years since I retired. They're working with parents who want the best for their kids. We want to make sure that they know what their children will need at 3 and 4 years old, how they're going to be prepared for kindergarten, and how to meet success as they move into the school system and into the path from K to 12. So it's important that we fund these things, and it's important that we have a sense that they are community efforts, that we are going to invest now so we reap the benefits later on. We're going to have kids who grow up and become active citizens in our democracy, not somebody that we're going to become, having to take care of. I think we have to fight also there's a scarcity mindset, and you probably heard of the zero-sum game. I think we run into situations where people think if the poorer folks get more, we lose something. If we, that's a zero-sum game. The scarcity model is that there's not enough to go around. Well, that takes me back to my points about where do we rank as far as wealth in the state and in the country. I'm not sure we're taking care of as many folks as we should. Sorry, I lost that last thought. Thanks. I'll just stop.
Thank you so much. And Mr. White, same question.
Well, this one is pretty easy for me. My son is 24 years old. I remember the United Way. We had a program called Success by 6, Hippie. You've had all these programs in the county for a very, very long time. Ms. Karen Jordan was there when my son was there, and she's still there. Tatiana Owings. So I make sure that I attend their events. They have quarterly events at Barstow or at Calvert Country. So what I do is I go, I attend. I have a lot of friends on social media, so I make sure that I post things to let people know that these programs and these resources are there, and they are taking care of these students all the way up to age 5, 6 years old. So I think that we're doing a phenomenal job with it. I think what we can to envision to grow it, I think just by getting the word out there a little more, or possibly doing something with transportation. Transportation is such an issue in Calvert County. So we have a lot of these great programs, but we can't get people there. So they try to move it around or try to have it central in Prince Frederick area for people, but I think that's one area that I think that we could grow it by making it more accessible to more people, because a lot of the people who possibly need these supports or this help are the ones that aren't getting them. Either they're not on social media, they don't check emails, they may not read the paper. So I think getting the word out there in more places, going to the areas, going to the games and to the different areas where these young parents are, also increasing our relationship with the county or with the hospitals. With the parents, they know with the prenatal and everything else, actually making sure that we're letting them know early, hey, you're about to have a baby, or getting with the daycares, just getting the word out more and more to make sure that people know that these services are there. And like I said, I don't go for the pizza or fruit punch or anything like that, but they do have those things, and it works. It works when you know that they have snacks and healthy stuff also. But I think by putting it out there that, hey, we have all these things, let's come, let us help you early, and also if we can get some transportation to help that, definitely would put us in a better place. So I have 20 seconds left. Head Start, Judy, Senate Committee. Yeah, so I think that we have great people, and they also have meetings. They have, I don't know if it's bi-monthly or quarterly, but I sit in on those meetings also, just so I can hear what's going on, because when people stop me in Walmart with a question, I want to be able to give them the answers. So I think we're doing a great job, but we can always do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes our questions this evening. So now I'd like to give each of the candidates 3 minutes for a closing statement. So we're going to start down with Dr. Schisler, if you'd like to provide some final thoughts for us.
Final thoughts is this is an extremely important election locally. You know about the importance statewide and nationwide. The three of us, again, have been running as a team, and we are stressing the point that we're going to work for each of our kids. We don't want to undo what has happened, what has been put in place in the last 10 to 15 years, going back to when Jack Smith was superintendent, when Dan Curry was superintendent. We had a lot of growing pains when it came to equity and diversity and inclusion. We don't want to turn back the clock on that. We feel it's important not to turn back the clock on that. We feel it's important to keep going down in that direction where everybody feels a part of this community and everybody has access to what this community can provide. So please vote for us. Please share with your friends. I'll share numbers that Cindy Yo usually shares with us frequently, is that in Calvert County there are 23,500 registered Democrats. There are 28,000, I think now it's up to 900 registered Republicans, so there's a 5,000 gap between the two. But the wild card, we've been saying, are the independent and the unaffiliated. There are 16,500 unaffiliated independent voters in Calvert County. And that increased from August to September by about 50 to 60 more registered voters. So it's important that we have as many registered voters. I think we got 69,000 registered voters in the county, that we had them participate. I think you've all heard that in the primary on May 14th. It was only 20% of registered voters showed up to vote. We can't run a democracy on 20%. Hopefully with the folks that are at the top of both tickets, it's going to bring more people out. But we need to make sure people think about state and especially think about local. This is an extremely important election locally. Thank you again to the CCAC group for hosting this tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Schisler. Mr. White, closing thoughts.
Yes. First of all, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. This is very important to hear and see and actually hear from the candidates directly. I have been on the board for 4 years, and when I tell people I'm running again, they say, why? Because it hasn't been easy. I've been on the board through the pandemic when I helped to lead with the county and the SROs to feed, I think we had 600,000 meals that we actually were able to give the students. Next was critical race theory. I was on the board when we went through that, and that was a very, very tough time that we went through. And for me, I went to Dr. Schisler because I'm a board member who, if I don't know, I'm going to go to someone who knows to make sure that I get the facts. So we made it through that. Then it was health. Then it was librarians. And so it constantly changes. And I've been there through all of it, and I want to continue to do that. It's something that I think that I was built for. When I think about decisions that I make decisions for the students first. That's my first goal, is to make sure that I'm doing it for the students. The students aren't Democrats, Republicans, or independents. They're students. This is a nonpartisan for the people in the back. This is a nonpartisan position. It should not matter. And as a community, we work well together. I mean, Brandon is sitting right here. I mean, the brothers in these schools and with the blue ribbon, purple star. You know, so that's what it takes. It shouldn't matter what letters behind your name. And that's also with our commissioners. We're all elected officials. So we all have a responsibility to this community to make sure that our students, when a kid graduates, when they walk across that stage, my goal is to make sure that they're ready. They're ready for the workforce, 2 or 4 year college, trade school, whatever it is. Our job is to make sure that they're ready. So in order to do that, we have to take care of them. I don't just show up. You know, you see my signs, I don't just show up. I show up and put in the work. When there's discipline issues or problems, I get in there and I make sure that we take care of that. So I think that being a hands-on board member who's very approachable, everything is not roses and rainbows. Sometimes it's ugly. But I think that you have to remove emotions when you're making decisions and go with the facts. And that's why being a basketball official and a mediator was the perfect 2 professions to prepare me for being on the board. So I'd like to have your vote on early voting the 24th through the 31st or November 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. White. Ms. Flame, your closing thoughts, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for CCAC for putting on this forum. I appreciate everyone coming out here tonight. It was a little chilly, so I hope everybody bundled up. So I have been here for 35 years. My children went through the system. Beach Elementary was a Title I school, so we got extra programs, which I was grateful for, because we went to the after-school nights. I didn't even realize we were a Title I school until I mentioned to Dr. Schischler how great those after-school programs were, those night programs were, and he's like, oh, we got that money because of Title I. I was like, oh, well, I'm very grateful, but I think all schools should have that extra money for those extra programs, because I think it really helped my kids a lot. You know, my daughter did CTA in the culinary. She ended up getting her PhD in psychology, but it gave her the opportunities to see whether she wanted to pursue a career in culinary or, you know, in psychology. So I'm grateful for those opportunities here in Calvert. I think everybody should have the opportunity to go look at the CTA and see, you know, pursue their dreams and see what they might want to do. Again, the Judy Center, I forgot to mention, at the Judy Centers, the kids who go through that are better prepared when they reach kindergarten. So that is a great program, and we definitely need to bump up that program. So I've been going to the Board of Education meetings for the last 18 months. I attended these meetings before I even ever dreamt of you know, going for this position, just because it was so fascinating to see what came before the board. There's construction, there's policies, you know, people come up and talk about what they face or what looks great. And I'm really impressed by the administrators and their professionalism and how well prepared they are for all the questions. The other thing I've been doing is I've been going to the science and engineering expos. I've been going to writing nights. I've been going to all the musicals, which are all awesome, so everybody go to those. We have a great community, and I don't think we even touch the surface of how much we have here. So as a board member, it would be an honor and a privilege to work in this system with all the educators, the students, the parents. I do believe in collaboration, and I would love to have your vote, either early voting or November 5th, but show up and vote for Jeanette Flame, Antoine White, and Mike Schischler. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause for our candidates this evening? So again, thank you to our candidates for showing up and showing out and sharing their thoughts with us. I want to thank the members of CCAC who worked to build these questions. We didn't try to build any gotchas. We didn't expect you to solve special education in 3 minutes, but we want to make sure that those thoughts are at the top of your mind and color your lens. I want to say thank you to Calvert Library for allowing this beautiful space for us to host. I want to thank the Calvert County Communications team for filming and setting this up tonight. Good job, fellas. I want to say thank you again to Sergeant Major Flessis and the Northern High School's, I'm going to say it again, Navy National Defense Cadet Corps. They did a great job presenting the colors and singing with Cadet Chief Petty Officer Piper Biggs. I want to say thank you to everyone who came out here tonight, and for the educators, special educators, instructional staff, bus drivers, front office staff, social workers, speech, OT, PT, bus drivers, building service, cafeteria staff. Everybody has an impact on our kids. It's not just the ones who teach them English, math, and science. So thank you for helping make Calvert great, and thank you for coming out tonight. And with that, we'll call it an evening. Thank you so much.